Hey everybody, Dr. Rob Silverman here. I'm excited. I'm doing this all by myself. So I'm the co-host, I'm the anchor, I'm the play-by-play, I'm the color commentary. I'm going to share some insights on immunity and how immunity is so important to you, with the big emphasis of how laser plays by helping our immune system. So I do want to answer any questions, so please feel free. We've got somebody monitoring the questions. Ask a question. Let's go for it. Every few minutes, I'll take a look and see what I can do to help with answering some of those questions. So let's just dig right in. And I want to give you a little background. I think some background would be really good. I want to give some background on what a laser is, what it does. I want to give some background on the immune system. I know there's a lot of questions about both. There's a lot of arguments. Let's just dig in. What is laser? Now, for me, laser is, I like to refer to it as low-level laser therapy, or if you will, photobiomodulation. But photobiomodulation is a catchphrase. So let's understand there are three things under photobiomodulation. There are low-level laser, non-thermal laser, there's infrared, and there's near infrared. So I just want to talk about low-level laser or low-intense light therapy, electromagnetic transfer of energy. The true effect of it should be, if you're going to use a laser, everybody, it should be photochemical, not photothermal. The idea of light triggering biochemical changes within the cells. The way I describe it with all my patients, with all my athletes that I work with, it can be compared to photosynthesis. Light goes in, producing energy result, hence the idea of photochemical. Photons, which get emitted by the laser, are absorbed by cellular receptors and trigger chemical changes. So essentially, let me break it down. Let me get a little more granular. Lasers directed to effective sight. You know, when you point the laser at someone, photons enter the tissue. They alter cell permeability or cell membrane permeability. Cell membrane permeability should be bidirectional. We should allow for nutrient ingestion and toxic egress. There should be cellular photochemical reactions. It should all be absorbed in the mitochondria, and laser should produce very efficient ATP. Now, a couple of things there. Let's get some key clinical gems. Number one, mitochondria. What's the number one mitochondria part of your body? Your brain. Number two, when you're efficient at ATP, what does that really mean? It means that you have a less exhaust to produce that citric acid cycle and allow for the ATP. That exhaust is free radicals or reactive oxygen species. The ultimate resulting effect applying a low-level laser in the body should be increased metabolic activity, vascular activity, and decreased inflammation. So a broad overview and some broad strokes, some therapeutic laser biological effects. Number one, we should see rapid cell growth, faster wound healing, increased metabolic activity, like we just said about in the idea of ATP, reduced fibrous tissue formation. It should produce an anti-inflammatory action, increased vascular activity, stimulated nerve function. Here's a big one. Stem cells should help and be released to help repair. And of course, healthy immune response, which can strengthen the immune system and help to fight off infections. Probably the big takeaway. The way I like to talk about laser and how it really affects the body in a healing sense is, number one, red lasers or 635 nanometer light has shown to significantly increase interleukin 10. That interleukin 10 dosage are anti-inflammatory, but at the same time, conversely, being pleiotropic lasers, when interleukin 10 increases, it also inhibits some pro-inflammatory interleukins like interleukin 6, interleukin 8, interleukin 1 beta, and TNF alpha. Whereas if you took drugs, you would need a drug to boost interleukin 10, and then you would need multiple drugs to decrease all those aforementioned pro-inflammatory interleukins. In addition to that, adding laser to your chiropractic treatment armamentarium, you're also going to have to allow for the regulation of the switch of M1 macrophages or microglial cells to the M2 phenotype in injured muscles. What did I just say? Going from M1 to M2, M1 is pro-inflammatory, M2 is anti-inflammatory. So you're making a switch at a cellular level. Huge takeaway by applying low-level laser therapy. And lastly, you're going to positively affect the electron transport chain. You're going to allow for enough electrons to provide energy to allow electrons, you provide enough photons. Hopefully I said photons. You provide enough photons to allow for the energy gap and electrons to jump one to the next to the next. So in essence, what produces ATP in the mitochondria? It's actually in the inner layer of the mitochondria, where is the site of electron transport chain. The takeaway, real simple, laser energy fuels the mitochondria. So now we covered the idea of laser. I can kind of dig in and exercise and laser. I just moved around. Let me see if there's any questions. No questions as of yet. We're pretty quiet. So let's dig in on some more information. Like I said, I'm here to answer questions. It's going to be quick. I'm not going to talk to 45 minutes. I'm going to try and be done in 20 to 30 minutes. I'm all by myself. Again, feel free to ask questions. I'm trying to cover a lot of information in a short period of time. One real takeaway that people have to realize and remember with athletes is too much exercise is bad for your gut. So most people look at me and say, well, what do you mean? Well, number one, 80% of your immune cells are in your gut. It's where your macro and micronutrients are absorbed. Once again, 80% of your immune cells are in your gut. Now, most people would say exercise is good for your gut. It is good for your gut. You see an increase in body composition. You see an increase in the microbiome biodiversity, which is really important, but too much exercise. And if anybody exercises too much, it would probably be athletes. They're exercising all the time. Let's define what too much exercise is. 2 hours or more of exercise could actually do damage to your gut. Intense physiological stress on the body can trigger what we call leaky gut syndrome. We're going to go into detail. In addition to that, it provides a shaky immune system, and it also can weaken muscles, give you an abnormal heart rate. But the big key is a leaky gut leads you down a path of a compromised immune system. So if you were to have this picture in your head, if I could make this evocative for everybody, I would have what I call my Dr. Rob's gut matrix. And my Dr. Rob's gut matrix would really talk about the gut. In that, once again, to me, the gut is the epicenter of your health. It's the epicenter of your performance and is the key to athletic performance. And I believe that many of us, unfortunately, athletes included, take for granted that athletes have a pristine immune system. They may not. They may have a compromised immune system, and that immune function or dysfunction may be the difference between third place, first place, no place, and first place. So let's take a look at what could damage our gut or our gut lining, or what leaky gut really means. Clearly, we talk about our gut. When I do, I'm speaking about what we like to refer to as the small intestine. 90 to 95% of your gut is your small intestine. It's sort of a misnomer. Your small intestine was named because it has a very thin diameter. When you compare it and contrast it with your large intestine has a triple layer epithelial cell, and it's very small. It's only 5 to 10% of your full intestines. Now, getting back to your small intestine, and the average athlete has about 22 feet of small intestine. In that also, it has a single layer epithelial cell. Its barrier, its cell, is that single layer epithelial cell that has the thickness of a wet paper towel. When that pristine wet paper towel is damaged or that it's too porous, we'd like to refer to it as leaky. In addition to that, what damages it? Well, for me, I test this on all my athletes. Every time they come in the first time, I test them for food allergies and food sensitivities. I test to see if they have a yeast overgrowth. I look and test and see if they have an unleveling of good and bad bacteria, something called dysbiosis. You need 85.1% of good bacteria not to have dysbiosis. Leaky gut can lead to an increased release of toxins and chemical overloads, which can lead to liver dysfunction. So you have to understand that your liver and your gut are bidirectional. In addition to that, a leaky gut leads you down a path of blood sugar problems, insulin resistance, prediabetes, and diabetes. When you couple that with the fact that there's a change in body composition, that's not going to be very advantageous for any athlete, male or female, in any of their aforementioned sports. When you couple the idea with a leaky gut leads you down the increased incidence of autoimmunity, especially thyroid, how many of my athletes have come in with a thyroid issue? And they think there's something wrong with their gland, and it's because their gut is leaky. Now, here's the takeaway. Here's the secret sauce. Leaky gut leads to joint compromise. Leaky gut can lead to disc compromise. A leaky gut leads to an increased release of cytokines, which leads you down a path of arthritis and joint pain, hence the idea of osteoarthritis. And when you add the autoimmune component, could be rheumatoid arthritis. The gut to disc axis, or the gut to disc compromise, comes from a release at the gut of bacteria and or MMPSs, matrix metalloproteinases, your body's own proteolytic enzymes, which are released at the time of injury, which eat fibrocartilage, hence your disc. In addition, as I just said before, bacteria goes through your gut and floats around. 52% of surgically impaired or removed discs had a bacterial infection. So you may begin to wonder, in that compromise in your gut, that compromise in your immune system may lead you down a path of disc injury. The bacteria may be the initiator of that disc injury. For me, the thing I love to talk about most is the gut to brain axis, or the superhighway to health. It's bidirectional. The gut and the brain speak to each other in a millisecond. If your gut's on fire, your brain's on fire. If your brain's on fire, your gut's on fire. If you have a concussion, you need to also treat the gut. And we could spend a whole upcoming Facebook Live just on that alone. But what do you do to fix the gut? Well, I have my typical 7R program and nutritional protocol and lifestyle, but I really want to hone in on laser. My take on why you would add laser to the gut area: non-thermal laser helps many conditions such as leaky gut, irritable bowel syndrome, Crohn's disease, and ulcerative colitis. As a matter of fact, adding laser and vagus nerve stimulation to an athlete's protocol, the data indicates that there's been a 50% remission of Crohn's disease and a 43% remission of ulcerative colitis. So adding laser, or what we like to refer to when we add laser to the gut, photobiomimics, it has the ability to alter the microbiome. Laser light can affect the microbiome indirectly through the daily circadian rhythm. We all know our circadian clock regulates levels of metabolites, including those from the microbiome, which in turn can affect the metabolome. Now, when you add that and you realize that there's a favorable improvement in good bacteria, 400-fold. Say that again. You laser somebody's gut and you're worried about their whole ecosystem, you can increase their good bacteria by 400-fold by adding a laser application to one's gut. And it also increases the microbial diversity. Vagus nerve, medulla oblongata down through the transverse colon. You guys have seen me do that before. Vagus nerve is really interesting in that it's cranial nerve number 10, again, going from the medulla oblongata down through the transverse colon. Stimulation of the vagus nerve improves intestinal blood flow, and vagus nerve stimulation has a positive effect on the gut. As a matter of fact, if you add vagus nerve stimulation in the first 90 minutes to gut damage, it helps ameliorate the tight junction infrastructure that was just damaged. So I'm going to double check again. I'm going to look over in my corner over here. Let's see if you had any questions. We're still pretty quiet. All right, no problems. You know, I know we're at all different time zones. In Australia, it's midday where I am. It's in the evening. In the UK, everybody's probably asleep. I got it. No problem. We'll see it on the replay. So let's really get into the immune system, because that's really what I wanted to talk about. I have a line that I like to use all the time, or a saying, if you will. You can't control the virus, but you can control the host. Now, when I say you can't control the virus, I can't control what's going on in the air. I can have a filter. I can do the best I can, but especially because I can't see the virus in the air, there's no way I can control it. But I can control the host, and you can control the host, ourselves, our friends, our family, our patients, our athletes. We can make ourselves inhospitable hosts, because viruses need a live human to live. So the immune system, what is it? How does it work? You know, I think, unfortunately, with the conversation for almost 3 years now, no one's really broken the immune system down, like Simon would say, as simple as 1, 2, 3. Well, I'm going to talk about the immune system like Simon says. It's simple as 1, 2, 3, because the immune system provides 3 levels of defense against disease-causing organisms. Number 1, the barrier system. It prevents entry. It's your skin and your mucous membrane. So if you damage your skin, you would put a Band-Aid on it. If you cut your skin and you had a wide enough gash, you would get some stitches. All those things, if you could metaphorically think about, would you do to your gut? Probably not, because you can't see your gut, but you can see your skin. Other things or barriers are your stomach acid and digestive enzymes. When you add that in beneficial bacteria that live in the colon, the gut microbiota, you see your whole digestive tract is part of your immune system. It has been postulated that the first time the outside world sees the inside world is when something goes through your digestive tract and passes your small intestine and gets into your bloodstream. But the two parts, 2 and 3, is what everybody really likes to talk about, the innate and the acquired immunity. The innate immunity is your general defense. Everybody has one. We get it at birth. It's like your Marines, or they are really referred to white blood cells, which are neutrophils, and macrophages. They engulf and destroy foreign invaders and damage cells. You also have something called your acquired immunity or your adaptive immunity. And in some cases, they call it specific immunity. It's a specific defense. It's based on white blood cells called B and T cells. Your T cells come from your thymus. Your B cells come from your bone marrow. Now, the T cells, which come from your thymus, are there to recognize foreigners, pathogens, antigens. Your thymus is an interesting gland because it's the first gland in your body to go through involution, meaning it shrinks, and it does so in your teenage years. So you see, as you age, you inherently lose a lot of your immunity. Your B cells, your antibodies, they come from your bone marrow. IgE, which is an allergic reaction, IgM, which is an early antibody, IgA, which is secretory at the gut and mucous membranes, especially your mouth in addition. And your biggest one, as far as in number, is IgG. 75% of your antibodies are IgG. We hear a lot about IgG in the news now. IgG is interesting in that it's known to protect specific cells and not allowing specific viruses to attack to the cell. IgG also is small enough to pass through the placenta, so you can go from the mom and protect the child. So you need a proper innate response. You need a proper acquired immunity, and you obviously acquire immunity over a duration of a lifetime, but you need a balance between the two. You don't want them elevated too high. You don't want them imbalanced, or you don't want them non-responsive. All the aforementioned examples of what you're seeing going on right now, and especially even with your athletes. So a normal immune response to infection should follow this cascade. Number 1, inflammation. Inflammation is part of the game. It's okay. You just don't want inflammation to be elevated, or you don't want inflammation to go too high. You should get some inflammation, and then you should stimulate your innate immunity. Your innate immunity should sync in a balanced form with your specific adaptive or acquired immunity. You should then start to get some resolution and ultimately memory. Those memories are categorized or cataloged, if you will, as antibodies. So they're remembering what just transpired. So if you get sick again with a very similar or exact virus, you're able to ward it off very efficiently. And that's a key component. When you look at immune response to COVID-19, if we could use that as the main example, which is the elephant in the room, we see that inflammation, most people's inflammation, they start too high and it doesn't shut down quick enough. It burns too high, the fire. And your innate immunity has less innate immunity cells because they've been burnt out. You have virulent factors which may or may not let your antibodies be produced. You're slow to resolve and your memory stinks. You're really, really sick from this infection. New theme. I was not able to get it in my book, which we'll talk about in a moment. It's called immune imprinting, or original antigenic sin. It is a phenomenon in which the body preferentially repeats its immune response to the first variant it encounters, despite being alerted to a new variant. So now that I gave you the definition, what does that mean? You make an antibody to the first attack. Attack 3, attack 4, attack 5, attack 6, as you go down the line, your body says, I'm not going to adapt, because if a virus mutates, a lot of people's immunity doesn't adapt and it sends out the wrong antibody. And that's why you're seeing people getting reinfected with similar type viruses that are variants, because we're not adapting. We're immune imprinting the original. And why do people do that? Well, it could be environment. It could be stressors like we talked about with athletes. It could be age. Other comorbidities are high blood sugar, loss of muscle mass, not very common with athletes. telegenic issues, etc. Immune imprinting. There was a study done in reference to long COVID. Now, we've all heard of long COVID. That's when you have symptomologies for over 12 weeks after the infection. The study was done at MIT and Harvard. It was done with 112 patients. Neurological long COVID symptoms were shown with inflammation of the brain, and they had cognitive deficits. Basically, what was found, there was underwhelming antibodies to COVID-19 and overwhelming antibodies to other coronaviruses. Coronaviruses prior to COVID-19 very simply was the common cold. So the findings truly suggested that immune imprinting can cause a neurological long COVID. So how do we avoid that? Well, we want to keep everybody's immune system as strong as you can. You want to put all your athletes on post-exercise supplements, recovery, rest. It could be laser, of course. But the big thing that everybody's talking about is long COVID or long haulers protocol. So when you look at long haulers, you're looking at helping with gut health, especially mitochondrial support, immune activation, manage and modulate inflammation by decreasing obesity, blood sugar, and any kind of anti-inflammatory status. So here is my long haulers protocol for long COVID that I've used for the last 2.5 years. You want to improve mitochondrial function. Most people who have had COVID, I'm using this as an example, have a decrease in energy levels. So you want to decrease fatigue. I use NMN, which makes NAD+. I add B vitamins, coenzyme Q10, acetyl L-carnitine, alpha lipoic acid, glutathione, magnesium, zinc, selenium, and vitamin C. It's an interesting thing why people have a mitochondrial deficit. And this is so very important why we want to use laser, because nothing imbues the mitochondria with the ability to produce ATP more efficiently than laser. But why does the mitochondria go when people get sick? Well, initially people get or lose their energy when you get the regular flu or a cold, very simply because your immune system uses more than 50% of your energy. That said, when you go up to that 55% loss, your mitochondria looks around and says, hey, wait a minute, something's put a real energy strain on us, on our cells. We're going to do something called cellular danger response, because mitochondria has two functions. It's to produce energy, but it's also what we call has a battlefield type of approach. It's there to help the innate immune system. So when you get COVID-19, as an example, with long haul or long COVID syndrome, your mitochondria totally shuts off its power of producing plants and then goes to help your innate immunity, and you're boom, you're out. So that's why I had that protocol that I mentioned to you, which was NMN, B vitamins, coenzyme Q10, acetyl L-carnitine, alpha lipoic acid, glutathione, magnesium, zinc, selenium, vitamin C, to stimulate the mitochondria to turn right back on. Even athletes, if they think their mitochondria shuts off and immediately turns on, as opposed to going through a whole recycling process, they may be very, very disappointed. If you want to activate your immune system, a list of mushrooms, maitake, lion's mane, shiitake, reishi, all great choices. When you take a look, you want to help somebody with their immune system or to avoid long COVID, you obviously want to incorporate a good quality lifestyle, good diet all the time, no processed carbohydrates, keep your low glycemic carbs in the diet, push the high ones out. You want to eat good fats, eat good quality amino acids. And of course, you want to have time restrictive eating, intermittent fasting, which allows for autophagy. Autophagy is the breakdown of old cells and use that debris to make new cells. And in that, you can have immunorejuvenation. You can have mitochondrial rejuvenation. They call that mitophagy. In addition to a lifestyle, you want to get good quality sleep. Sleep is critical to allow the cells to rejuvenate, but more so than that, sleep is critical to allow the brain to detox. You want to have an exercise protocol. Most athletes do. For me, maybe the backbone of getting that immune system recharged, as I said before, is low-level laser, electromagnetic transfer of energy. And let's go through some of the ideas of how laser works. Now, I'm choosing my words carefully, but I was a little amiss that people didn't talk about some of these these articles that came out. Here's an article that came out in 2020 that talk about the effectiveness of photobiomodulation. It was laser therapy in COVID-19. The use of low-level laser could be an effective strategy for preventing severe and critical illness in SARS-CoV-2 infections. In addition, they found that laser would be a disease treatment and prevention in the era of COVID-19. When you couple that, laser added to your protocol would allow for the prevention of endothelial dysfunction from a lot of COVID-19 patients. Low-level laser is a modality which is known to attenuate cytokine storm at multiple levels, enhance recovery, and reduce the time sick from COVID-19. Laser has a strong anti-inflammatory effect, which were confirmed by meta-analysis. It's also used for pain management. Tons and tons of peer-reviewed double-blind studies that really talked about the cytokine storm, reducing inflammatory metabolites, very safe and effective, potential treatment for the pandemic, works very synergistically with nutritional protocols. So let me give some, what I like to say, some lifestyle hacks for controlling your host. So if everybody's got a pen and a piece of paper, here you go. If you want to control the host, you want to avoid certain foods. For instance, GPS and DNA. Now, what do I mean by those acronyms? GPS, no gluten, no processed food, no sugar. DNA, no dairy, no nicotine, no artificial sweeteners. Follow an anti-inflammatory diet. Avoid vegetable oils. Avoid any deep fried foods. Control your glycemic index and your load. Whatever you do, detect and avoid food sensitivities and decrease and avoid your environmental overload. Make clean eating a priority. Not all athletes have great diets. Tom Brady has this breathtaking diet, but not every athlete has a great diet. So you want to eat more organic. You want to consume wild smash fish, salmon, mackerel, anchovies, sardines, herring. You want to consume a more plant-based or plant-forward diet. You want to consume fruits and vegetables, grass-fed meats, high fiber, nuts and seeds, chicken soup, organic dark chocolate if you want a snack, herbs, you want to add ginger, turmeric, of course, bone broth and chicken soup. Make sure that they're hydrated and drinking an appropriate amount of water. If you're going to consume coffee, and I am a coffee buff, I love it, aficionado, I'd like to say, organic coffee and organic teas, oils, extra virgin olive oil, avocado, macadamia nut, all great choices. And lastly, some lifestyle true hacks. We talked about it before. Time restrictive eating, intermittent fasting. You want to have a 14 to a 16-hour break from eating and an 8 to 10-hour window in which to consume foods. Get sufficient sleep, 7 to 8 hours is critical. Get on that exercise program. Get those workouts in. Hey, chiropractic care is a great option to help with the immune system. Low-level laser, for me, the sparkling modality to help the immune system, modify the stress, and do everything you can to support and modify your immune system. The great JFK once said, the time to repair the roof is when the sun is shining. I'm extrapolating. I think he believes when it comes to your health and when it comes to your immunity, you need to be more proactive than reactive. So let me see again, take a quick look in the corner, see if anybody had any questions. No, we've been pretty good. Well, I'm going to show you my book, Immune Reboot. You can get it on Amazon. The link is immunereboot.com. You can go right there. You can get your paperback. It'll come to you December 15th. You guys can reach out to me at info@drrobsilverman.com. You can reach out to them, everybody at Fix. There it is. I don't see any questions. I told you I was going to keep it 30 minutes or less. I'm at 29 minutes. It's been my pleasure to share with you. I just want to leave you with this. You know, a lot of people ask, why do you write a book? You know, is it a labor of love? Well, it is a labor of love without question. I wrote the book because in March of 2020, everybody knows there was a coronavirus in New York. By May of 2020, there was something called long hauler syndrome. Where I live right outside New York City in Westchester County. My patients were all sick. There was nowhere to go. There was nobody to ask. There was nobody to help them. My athletes were getting sick. My athletes weren't competing. It was a horrific experience for me. And someone who's taken the oath to do no harm, but the oath to himself to always try and help people and bring an A game, I was lost. So I just put my head to the grindstone, learned everything I could about immunity, try to help everybody I can. And this is the culmination, the compendium of all the protocols wrapped up into one type book. It's about 270 pages. It's 10 chapters. The last chapter is a recipe chapter. So everybody really likes that. I'm getting a lot of great reviews on that. The two of the chapters are on COVID, especially one in particular on long COVID. The first two chapters speak on how to help the immune system. Chapter 3 is all the nutrients that can go with the immune system. Chapter 4 and 5 is about the gut. Chapter 6 is all about autoimmunity. So you've really got a full plethora of choices, and it's barrel filled of information. I'd love to hear how you feel about it. It's been my pleasure. I think I'll bring Megan on, but if Megan's going to come on, we'll say goodbye together.
Sounds great. Hi, everybody. I'm Meg. I've been tapping the buttons behind the screen, making sure that the stream all works fantastically. But thank you, Dr. Rob, so much for your time. It's always a pleasure to have you on. And the replay will, as always, be here permanently live for everyone to watch on the Facebook page. And we'll also be embedding it within our new Erchonia sponsor page on the Fix website as well. So it'll be permanently available for replay there as well. So thank you, Dr. Rob, once again for your time. It's been fantastic having you on with us again.
Thanks so much, everybody. I'm Dr. Rob Silverman. Hope to hear from you soon. Always yours in health.